Farms are supposed to be quiet places, far away from the chaos of the city. But in that isolation, when the sun goes down and the fields turn dark, silence becomes something terrifying. Tonight, we'll explore 3 disturbing true farm horror stories that prove even the most peaceful lands can hide the most unsettling secrets. So lock your doors, dim the lights, and prepare yourself. It was the fall of 2016 when I decided to spend a few weeks helping my uncle on his farm in Iowa. I was 19 at the time, a broke college student who figured a little extra cash and free meals wouldn't hurt. My uncle's farm was pretty isolated, no neighbors for miles, just endless fields of corn swaying with the wind. The first few days were uneventful. I woke up early, did chores, and fell asleep exhausted. But on the 4th night, something strange happened. I was lying in the small guest room near the 2nd floor window, scrolling through my phone before bed, when I noticed movement out in the field. At first, I assumed it was a deer or maybe some stray dog, but when I looked closer, I saw what looked like a man, standing perfectly still in the corn. I froze. His body blended in with the tall stalks, but I could see the outline of his shoulders, the pale glint of a face turned toward the house. He didn't move. He just stood there, as though he were waiting for me to notice him. I told myself it was probably just a trick of the light, or maybe a scarecrow my uncle had put up. But when I asked him the next morning, he frowned. "No scarecrows in that field," he said. "Haven't had one in years." The second night, I went to bed early, but I couldn't resist peeking out the same window. And there he was again, the same figure, in the same spot, only this time closer, maybe 30 feet from the house. Once again, motionless, watching. I shut the curtains and tried to sleep, but the image burned into my mind. I eventually drifted off, only to wake to a tapping sound on the window. My heart pounded as I sat up. The curtains fluttered slightly from the wind, but no branches were anywhere near the glass. Slowly, I pulled them back. Nothing. The field was empty. The next morning, I walked out there myself. The soil was damp from rain, so footprints were easy to spot. And sure enough, there were impressions, large, heavy boots, leading in from the road toward the spot I had seen him. The strange thing was they went into the corn, but never came out. No return trail. That night, I tried to convince myself it was all in my head. I even avoided looking outside. But around midnight, I woke again to a sound that made my blood run cold, scratching at the glass. I turned slowly toward the window, and I swear, standing just a few feet away, on the other side of the glass, was the same figure. His face was pale, almost gray, with sunken eyes that locked directly onto mine. His nails scraped slowly down the window pane, leaving streaks as he dragged his hand across it. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. I just sat frozen, staring at him. Finally, I jolted out of bed and shouted for my uncle. By the time he rushed in with a shotgun, the window was empty. We searched the entire property, but found nothing. No footprints this time, no trace of anyone. The next day, my uncle quietly suggested I head back home. He looked disturbed, like he knew something but wasn't willing to say. Before I left, he told me, "You don't look out into the fields at night. Not here." To this day, I don't know who or what I saw in that cornfield. But every fall, when the air gets colder and the stalks start to sway, I can't help but think of that pale figure, standing silently, waiting for me to look his way. When I was 16, I spent a summer at my grandparents' farm in rural Kentucky. Their land stretched across acres of rolling hills, but the centerpiece was always the old red barn. It was massive, with warped wooden beams, peeling paint, and a roof that sagged just slightly to one side. To me, the barn had always felt off. Even in broad daylight, I hated being inside for too long. My grandpa used it for storage, mostly, but he never let me go in after sunset. He didn't explain why, just gave me a stern look and said, "Barn's not safe at night." At 16, I chalked it up to creaky floors or wild animals. But one summer night, curiosity got the better of me. It was just past midnight when I woke up thirsty. As I went to the kitchen for water, I noticed a dim light flickering through the cracks of the barn door. At first, I thought maybe my grandpa had left a lantern inside, but then I remembered he always locked it up tight before bed. I stood at the window, staring, debating whether or not to check it out. Against my better judgment, I slipped on my shoes and walked out into the night. The crickets went silent as I got closer, the air suddenly colder than it should have been. The barn door, which was always padlocked, hung slightly open. A faint orange glow pulsed from inside, like candlelight. I pushed it open and stepped in. The smell hit me first, damp hay mixed with something metallic, almost like rust. But when I looked down, I saw it wasn't rust. There were dark stains in the dirt, leading toward the center of the barn. At the center stood an old wooden table, and on top of it, 4 candles, arranged in a perfect circle, flickering though there was no draft. The moment I laid eyes on them, the barn door slammed shut behind me. I spun around, heart hammering. The door wouldn't budge when I shoved it. Then, from above, I heard movement, slow, deliberate footsteps pacing across the hayloft. "Grandpa," I whispered, my voice shaking. No answer. The footsteps stopped, followed by a low, dragging sound, like something heavy being pulled across the floorboards above. Dust rained down from the beams, and then I heard it, breathing. Long, ragged breaths, as if something was trying not to be heard. I stepped back, trying to keep my eyes on the loft, but the candles flickered violently, throwing shadows across the walls. One of the shadows didn't match. It was taller, with twisted limbs and a head that tilted unnaturally far to one side. Before I could scream, a shape dropped from the loft. It landed with a heavy thud just a few feet away. My knees nearly gave out as I saw it. A figure, crouched low to the ground, pale skin stretched tight over bones. Its eyes glowed faintly in the candlelight, reflecting like an animal's. It didn't move right away. It just crouched there, staring at me, breathing in those horrible ragged gasps. Then, slowly, it stood to its full height, towering over me. I bolted for the door, kicking and clawing until it finally gave way. I stumbled out into the night, sprinting toward the house without daring to look back. My grandpa was waiting on the porch, shotgun in hand. He didn't ask me what happened. He just shook his head, muttering, "Told you not to go in there at night." The next morning, when I woke, I asked him about the barn. He refused to explain, only saying, "Some places hold onto things. Not all of them human." That barn is still standing today. I haven't been back in years, but sometimes, late at night, I'll dream of those glowing eyes and that sound of something dragging across the hayloft, waiting for me to step inside again. When I was about 15, my parents sent me to spend a few weeks with my uncle on his farm in Kansas. His property was huge, stretching for miles in every direction. Nothing but endless fields of corn. The kind of place where, at night, the silence feels heavy, almost unnatural. Out in the middle of those fields stood a scarecrow. It was old, slumped on a wooden cross, with a wide-brimmed hat covering most of its burlap face. Its clothes were ragged, stuffed with straw that spilled from the seams. From the porch, you could see it standing tall in the moonlight, its silhouette oddly human against the dark cornfields. I asked my uncle about it once. He just shrugged and said, "Been out there longer than I've had this land. Never needed replacing. Corn seems to grow just fine with it standing there." I laughed it off at the time, but the more I looked at that scarecrow, the less like a harmless farm decoration it seemed. The first night I stayed there, I woke up around 2 a.m. to the sound of rustling outside my window. First, I figured it was the wind moving through the corn, but when I glanced outside, the stalks were perfectly still. Instead, I saw something else, the scarecrow. It was standing at the edge of the yard, closer to the house than it had been before. I rubbed my eyes, thinking maybe I was half dreaming. But no, it was there, its head tilted slightly, facing my window. The next morning, I ran out to check. It was back in its original spot, tied to its post, arms outstretched. I didn't tell my uncle. I figured maybe I imagined it. But it happened again. The second night, I heard footsteps on the gravel path near the porch. Slow, heavy steps dragging slightly, as if someone was walking with stiff legs. My heart pounded as I peeked through the blinds. The scarecrow was standing at the porch steps. Its head was raised now, face angled toward the door, its straw-stuffed arms hanging limply at its sides instead of stretched on the post. I froze, unable to look away. It didn't move again. It just stood there until dawn. By the time my uncle came downstairs for breakfast, it was gone, back in the cornfield, tied to the post like it had never moved. I finally told him what I'd seen. He didn't laugh. Instead, he got quiet, real quiet, and said, "Don't pay it no mind. Just don't acknowledge it." That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the old farmhouse made me jump. Around midnight, I heard it again, the dragging steps, closer this time, circling the house. I hid under the covers, but curiosity got the better of me. Peeked again. This time, the scarecrow was standing directly in the yard, only a few feet from my window. Its burlap face was tilted upward, the stitched smile stretched across it. What made my stomach drop was that its eyes didn't look like buttons or black stitches anymore. They looked wet, reflective, alive. I ducked back under the blanket, holding my breath until morning light seeped into the room. When I dared to look again, it was gone. The last night I stayed at the farm was the worst. I woke to the sound of scratching against the wall outside my room. Long, slow scrapes like straw dragging against wood. My chest tightened as the sound climbed higher, until it was right outside my window. When I looked, the scarecrow wasn't on the ground anymore. It was perched on the ledge, its head pressed against the glass, those shining, wet eyes staring straight at me. Its stitched smile twitched, as if trying to move. I screamed, and my uncle burst into the room. By the time he got there, the scarecrow was gone. He grabbed me by the arm and said, "Pack your things. You're leaving tonight." On the drive back, I asked him what it was. He wouldn't answer directly. All he said was, "That scarecrow was never put there by me. It's older than this farm, older than my father's time. Some things are meant to keep watch, and they don't like being noticed." I've never gone back to his farm, but sometimes, in the dead of night, when I hear the sound of wind moving through trees, I think of those heavy, dragging footsteps, and I wonder if that scarecrow ever found a new place to stand. These disturbing stories remind us that even the most familiar places can hold terrifying secrets. The countryside may look peaceful during the day, but at night, it hides things that were never meant to be seen. If you enjoyed these stories, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to Mr. Haunting for more real-life horror tales. And remember, sometimes the quietest places are the most dangerous.